Teacher development books usually mention studying a foreign language as one of the best actions teachers can take in order to gain insight into what students go through in the learning process. All the way back in January, it was even one of my suggestions of things to try in 2021. To make sure that I walk my talk, this year I've kept on studying Catalan. As expected, I've had some great lessons that I enjoyed tremendously, and also some other lessons that didn't really work for me. I'm Rubens Heredia, one of your Pavilion EOT vloggers, and in this video I want to share with you 5 tips for more effective teaching based on insights I gained as a language student. So come with me. Before we start with the tips themselves, just a disclaimer. Although the tips I'm sharing here are pretty much widely accepted practice in English language teaching, remember that students are different, so getting to know your own students well and understanding their needs is key. And a big thank you to all my teachers who put up with me asking weird questions in lessons. I've been enjoying the experience so much. But let's cut to the chase. Tip number 1, read the room. Even though we try to anticipate problems that students may have with the language or with the tasks when we plan our lessons, it is important to pay attention to students. Noticing how they respond to the activities allows us to course correct if needed, changing the task, providing extra support, encouraging peer help, etc. The main feature in the latest issue of ET Professional is a great article by Alan Melly and Rod Bolitho called Thinking Things Over: Axioms and Principles for Language Teaching. Here's one of the great things they had to say. Learners teach you every day, but you have to be prepared to tune into what they are telling you through the responses and all the different signals they send out. This is all the more important in this age of technological advances, when the learners may be experiencing their learning in a different way from the way you did when you were at school. Needs assessment questionnaires can be a helpful tool to understand learners' preferences and needs, but much more effective learner feedback can come from just observing their in-class behavior and talking to them. Tip number 2, use a variety of materials. As a student, I actually love course books. I always have. It helps me organize my studies, seeing all the tasks completed give me a sense of achievement, but I do appreciate it when teachers bring extra materials to supplement the lesson. Not only does it show students that the teacher is planning the lesson carefully, but it also allows the learners to be exposed to a wider range of sources, accents, and types of texts. Designing your own materials may help you deal with more current topics and events, and even approach more niche interests of your learners. Here's some great advice by Catherine Bilsborough in the latest edition of Modern English Teacher. When thinking of the learners, whenever possible, have a 2-step thought process. First, think of the whole group. Then, think of each individual learner within the group. This second step is only possible when we create materials for our own learners, and is ultimately what has the potential of making our materials so much better than anything that already exists. However, be careful not to end up bringing extra stuff just for the sake of it, without a clear purpose or logic. Make sure that the materials you design integrate well with the other course materials, and that the tasks you design help students develop the skills they need to. Tip number 3, provide context and examples for grammar. Different students have different backgrounds, profile, and interests. This means that their ability to cope with different types of information also vary. I'm an English teacher, right? So that means in my Catalan lessons I was able to understand all the meta language and make sense of complex grammar rules much more easily than most of my classmates. Nothing wrong with using and introducing terminology, mind you, but make sure that you also present students with clear contexts and examples. The abstract and analytic approach to grammar can be very helpful to some students, but not all. In a very insightful post for ET Professional, Jieswa Chong gives us very helpful questions to help decide when and how to use meta-language. How well do your learners already know these terms? Do you have to spend time teaching them the terms? Will using these terms help your learners understand and be more aware of how the English language works, and help them to use it better? Will using these terms help the students use their course material better? Will using these terms save you time explaining language in the long run? And will these terms confuse the learners? Tip number 4, correct mistakes, but don't overdo it. Expressing yourself in a different language is not easy, especially when you're still at lower levels, so mistakes are a part of learning. However, nobody wants to make mistakes, and being corrected in front of others can be a negative experience to many students. When sitting on the students' chair, I like being corrected, especially when I understand what I did wrong and how I can get it right. According to Russ Main, it is certainly the case that there is evidence that explicit forms of correction, for example, asking students to correct their sentences or questioning "He-go," is more effective than more subtle forms of feedback, such as recasts, that is, just repeating the sentence with the error corrected. Also, don't stop at correcting. Give students an opportunity to get it right by reformulating their sentence, for example. Being able to help me get sense of achievement out of a potentially embarrassing situation is one of the skills that some of my favorite teachers had. And let the students at least finish their thoughts before correcting their language. Don't interrupt them mid-sentence, right? Tip number 5, allow thinking time and preparation time. As teachers, we ask students questions for a number of reasons, such as to check their understanding, hear their opinions, assess their current knowledge. We also include speaking activities to help our students develop fluency. However, it's not uncommon for students to avoid answering questions or participating more actively in speaking activities. According to Christine Go and Ann Burns, we are reminded that students who do not speak up in class are not necessarily unmotivated or uninterested. Failure to participate may not even be due to a complete lack of ability. Rather, students' lack of participation in speaking activities may very well be the result of deep-rooted beliefs and fears that lead to great anxiety whenever they have to perform in class. Giving students thinking time, that is, allowing some time for them to formulate their answers without rushing them, and also preparation time, just a minute for students to organize their thoughts before engaging in speaking activities, can do wonders to help those students who are struggling with confidence. I hope these tips are useful and help you plan and deliver more effective lessons. But more than that, I hope it inspires you to try to see things from the learner's perspective more often. And who knows, maybe you might even learn a new language along the way. Let me know in the comments if you've had any interesting experiences learning a new language, or you can connect with me on all social media at WhatIsELT. Keep experimenting and keep teaching.